First, playing Russian roulette on the railway tracks.
11 people were killed when a semi-trailer smashed into a train in Victoria.
Both the adults were killed, their daughter survived. Injured, she was pulled from the back seat and comforted by the distraught train driver.
City-bound one morning, a southbound train that hit a young girl about 15. She was trespassing on the railway line. The driver on the southbound train didn't realise he'd struck her, and he threw her across the tracks onto my city-bound line. She was still alive when we got out of the cab, but she'd suffered massive head injuries, and she virtually died within a minute of me getting on the ground to her. It traumatises you, it's sight and sound that you'll never forget. I can still recall the look on her face, the clothing she had on, the position she was laying in when we hit her, and the sounds of her as she passed away.
As I approached the station, I saw some movement, and then to my horror I saw a young man standing on the line at the Adelaide end of the station who was about to try and cross the line. I went into full braking mode, but I couldn't stop the train before him. He jammed himself into a 300mm gap as I went past him at probably 40 kilometres an hour.
We've got a 340-tonne train. We do our best to try and stop them, and we just hope that this person will move or get out of the way before we do it. As train drivers, we have to run over that section of track for the rest of our railway career. So you can't help but not think about it every time you come around that bend or into that cutting or tunnel or that station. You know, it's always there.
I was coming into the Narngalow yard and a truck didn't stop at a stop sign at the crossing, and we T-boned him basically. I put the brake on and that's all I could do. The loco had spun 180 degrees and landed on its side. And I woke up and I could smell fuel, and I honestly thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to burn.
My train was involved with an accident with a loaded grain truck. He just didn't stop. I saw him coming, did what I could do. 9 months later, I went back to work. Really gets you on the edge of your chair when you can see a car approaching the crossing and they're not going to stop. And they look up at you. You can see it written all over their face.
I had a 3-month-old son at the time of the accident, and it really didn't hit home until I saw my wife and my son while I was in hospital. I was hesitant about coming back to work. I didn't know if I wanted to do it anymore.
I haven't got over it, and I don't think my wife has. If I have another one, I don't know how good I'll go.
It ruins people's lives.
We've got an area of track here we used to call Suicide Alley. How do you overcome that? We were coming home from Port Augusta at 2:30 in the morning, and I seen this movement through the trees, which I thought was an animal. But when we straightened up and the lights shone on her, it was a young girl. She just stood up in front of us and we ran over her. So we knew we had no hope of stopping at all, and we ran over her. What did I say to my family? I got them out of bed and I said, I need to talk to you. And I just said that I'd run over a young girl. And I couldn't say much more than that at that time.
I was on a 4-car train. I noticed on the downside of the platform near the bridge, a young girl there. She was probably about 35, 40 years of age, just standing there with a can of Coke in her hand, and I happened to just notice it jump straight in front of the intercity train coming the other way, and it all happened like it was in slow motion, you know, like this beautiful person just jumping in front of a train, and I just thought, wow, what happened there? You can hear the bang on the front of the train, and if you're going at a reasonable pace, you know, it's history for them, and it gives you this bad feeling inside of you, and that really got to me in a way that I felt very sorry for them.
The hardest thing to get over from the incident that I had was the images. Of the young girl standing on a track.
I've had 3 fatalities now. One of the looks on their face is, if they didn't mean to do it and they're in a place they shouldn't be, is that look of, oh my God, and that's it. And that's a look that'll never leave you.
There's a massive difference between seeing someone who's walking, living and breathing in the last moments of their life, to see them absolutely die in the most horrific manner you could ever imagine. It's just, you can't describe it, it's terrible.
It can have quite a severe impact on people and their psychological health, knowing that, you know, in some circumstances they've taken another life. They will experience post-trauma, they will go through experiencing significant anxiety and sometimes depression, and that can have an impact on them for weeks, months, and sometimes years in terms of how they cope with that.
I'm in a constant state of subtle anxiety. You never know when this is going to happen.
You get massive, what I call massive stress headaches, which seem to be a pain that come from the back of the neck to the top of the head. They can hit you pretty heavily.
I'll have dreams about trains not stopping. The brakes won't work and I run over people.
Typically what we find is that a train driver's been involved in these particular incidents, they become withdrawn. So they withdraw from social contact, they withdraw from interactions with family members and can become quite isolated.
I think it'd be a great idea if the industry got on board and got behind all train drivers and train crewing that were involved in fatalities and helped them out of that hole, because they're in that hole for a while and it's just not for 2 or 3 visits to the counsellor. I think it needs to be ongoing.
It's a prevention issue in terms of trying to provide information to members of the public about how important it is for track safety, so that, you know, members of the public are not taking risks or are not utilising this as a form to end their lives and so on. And the more information we can get out there about the impact that has on the train drivers involved, hopefully the more successful we are in preventing those kinds of incidents. If the rail industry were able to work towards providing support nationally across to every train driver in working through the traumatic events that they have to experience, I think that they're going to more successfully enable them to return to work that much faster and get support from their peers in doing so.
Nationwide, we all need to be aware and alert to what's happening with accidents, fatalities and all this sort of thing, and we all want to keep ourselves and the public safe.
We members of train crew and supports are your coalface people.
And I love my job. It's one of the best jobs in the world and I'm very proud of it.